France did not become powerful by being the strongest, the fastest, or the richest. France became powerful by convincing the world what good taste looks like. Think about that for a moment. Before factories dominated nations, before technology ruled markets, before social media told people what to buy, France already decided what elegance meant, what luxury felt like, what sophistication sounded like, and what high class should cost. And then France charged the world for it. When people hear France, they think of romance, fashion, food, art, perfume, wine, philosophy, and long conversations that somehow last 3 hours but feel like 10 minutes. What they don't usually think about is this simple fact. France built one of the most profitable economic systems in history by turning culture itself into currency. This is not a coincidence. This is not accidental beauty. This is strategy refined, repeated, and perfected over centuries. France understood something long before modern marketing existed. People don't buy products. They buy identity. They buy meaning. They buy status. They buy the feeling of belonging to something higher. And France positioned itself as the global source of that feeling. While other nations competed on production, France competed on perception. While others chased efficiency, France mastered desirability. While some built empires with armies, France built influence with language, taste, ritual, and standards so deeply embedded that the world still follows them, often without realizing it. This is why Paris remains a world capital. This is why French luxury brands dominate global markets. This is why French food, fashion, wine, perfume, art, and philosophy still define excellence centuries later. This is why France can lose wars, change governments, burn systems down, rebuild them, and still remain culturally untouchable. France didn't just export goods. France exported definition. In this episode of Sethtra Civilizations, we are not telling a romantic story about France. We are uncovering a much more interesting one, how a nation turned elegance into leverage, culture into capital, and identity into long-term wealth. This is the story of how power can be quiet, how wealth can be subtle, and how culture, when protected and monetized correctly, can outlast empires. This is France. And once you understand how France works, you'll never look at luxury, branding, or power the same way again. Part 1. The Past. How France built wealth by centralizing power, taste, and identity. To understand France's economic power, we must first understand one uncomfortable truth. France did not grow wealthy by accident. It grew wealthy by control, not chaotic control, but carefully designed central control. Long before modern capitalism, France learned how to concentrate authority, standardize systems, and turn obedience into efficiency. In medieval Europe, France was not yet elegant. It was fragmented, violent, and unstable. Feudal lords ruled land like personal kingdoms, collecting taxes, fighting neighbors, and building wealth through force. Trade existed, but it was inconsistent. Power shifted constantly. Wealth leaked everywhere. And then something uniquely French happened. The monarchy began doing what others failed to do, pull power inward. French kings didn't just want land, they wanted loyalty, taxation rights, legal authority, and cultural legitimacy. Over centuries, they weakened feudal independence and replaced it with centralized governance. Taxes flowed upward. Laws flowed downward. And slowly, something rare emerged, a state strong enough to organize wealth at scale. This centralization changed everything. Roads improved, markets stabilized. Trade routes became safer, currency became standardized. Contracts gained authority. And for the first time, economic activity could grow without being constantly destroyed by local chaos. But France didn't stop at administration. France understood that authority alone is not enough. Authority must look legitimate. It must feel superior. It must inspire awe. This is where France did something no other kingdom mastered quite as well. The French court became a stage. Royal palaces weren't just homes. They were economic tools. Versailles was not built to impress tourists centuries later. It was built to control nobles. By forcing elites to live near the king, France drained their independence, regulated their wealth, and absorbed their influence. Nobles spent fortunes maintaining appearances. Their power weakened. The state grew stronger. And something else happened quietly. Luxury became institutionalized. Clothing, etiquette, language, food, architecture, art, all were standardized and elevated by the court. Taste was no longer personal, it was political. If you wanted power, you adopted French style. If you wanted legitimacy, you followed French norms. This is where France planted a seed that would grow for centuries. Culture as governance. Meanwhile, French cities expanded trade networks across Europe. Wine, textiles, glass, metalwork, and agricultural goods flowed outward. French merchants learned that quality plus reputation created higher margins than volume alone. And the state protected this advantage through regulation, guilds, and controlled production standards. France didn't just allow business. France managed business. Guild systems ensured skill transmission, controlled competition, and protected reputation. Yes, it slowed innovation sometimes, but it preserved quality. And quality, France realized, lasts longer than speed. Then came the intellectual layer. France invested in education, philosophy, science, and bureaucracy. Literacy among elites increased. Administrative systems became sophisticated. Legal codes evolved. The French language itself became a diplomatic standard across Europe. To speak French was to belong to power. And when France expanded militarily, it didn't only conquer land, it exported systems. French law, administration, culture, and economic thinking followed. Even when territories were lost, French influence often remained embedded. But no system is eternal. By the late 18th century, the very structure that created French wealth also created tension. The state was rich, the court was extravagant. The people were taxed heavily. Inequality grew visible. Resentment simmered. And then France did something radical. It burned its own system down. The French Revolution was not just political. It was economic shock therapy. Property was redistributed. Nobility collapsed. Old privileges vanished overnight. Chaos followed. Violence followed. Instability followed. And yet, this is critical. France did not abandon centralization. It redesigned it. Under Napoleon, France rebuilt administration, law, taxation, and infrastructure with ruthless efficiency. The Napoleonic Code standardized legal systems across vast territories. Merit replaced birth in many institutions. The state became leaner, more rational, and more powerful. France emerged bruised, but transformed. By the time Europe entered the industrial age, France already possessed centralized governance, legal uniformity, cultural authority, skilled labor traditions, global reputation. It may not have industrialized as aggressively as Britain, but it didn't need to. France already controlled something far more valuable: definition. What is refined? What is civilized? What is cultured? What is elite? That definition would soon become one of the most profitable economic assets in the modern world. And that brings us to the next phase. Part 2. The present. How France quietly dominates the global luxury economy. If you only looked at headlines, you might think France is struggling. Protests, strikes, pensions, bureaucracy, slow reforms, angry debates in cafes that somehow never end. And yet behind all that noise, France continues to generate extraordinary economic power in a way few nations can replicate. France's modern economy does not rely on speed. It relies on position. France does not compete to be the cheapest. France competes to be the reference. This is the most important idea to understand about France today. In the modern global economy, France has perfected what we can call controlled capitalism, a system where the state protects strategic industries. Culture is treated as infrastructure, and national identity is actively defended as an economic asset. Nowhere is this clearer than in luxury. France is the undisputed capital of global luxury, not because it produces more goods, but because it controls the top of the value chain. Fashion, perfume, cosmetics, wine, champagne, spirits, jewelry, watches, hospitality, art, gastronomy. France does not simply participate in these industries. It sets their rules. The most powerful luxury companies in the world are French. LVMH alone controls dozens of iconic brands: Louis Vuitton, Dior, Moët, Hennessy, Givenchy, Fendi, Bulgari. These brands are not just profitable, they are cultural institutions. They sell emotion, aspiration, and identity at margins other industries can only dream of. And here's the key: France understands that luxury is recession-resistant. When markets crash, mass consumption suffers. Luxury adapts. The ultra-wealthy do not stop buying. They become more selective. France's brands thrive in that selectivity. But France's power does not stop at luxury products. It extends into global influence systems. Paris remains one of the most important diplomatic cities on Earth. French is still a major diplomatic language. French legal frameworks influence international law. French universities educate global elites. French media shapes intellectual conversation. French food standards influence global agriculture. France monetizes taste at scale. And while some nations allow culture to be diluted by globalization, France does the opposite. France protects culture aggressively. Film quotas ensure French cinema survives. Language laws defend French against erosion. Agricultural protections preserve terroir. Urban planning protects heritage. Yes, it frustrates some investors. Yes, it slows certain innovations. But it preserves something far more valuable: distinctiveness. Distinctiveness is what creates pricing power. France understands this deeply. Now let's talk about the paradox everyone notices. France has strong unions. France has high taxes. France has powerful labor protections. France has frequent protests. And yet France continues to attract global capital. Why? Because investors don't only look at flexibility. They look at stability, legitimacy, and brand trust. France offers predictable institutions, long-term infrastructure planning, skilled labor, world-class engineering, aerospace leadership, energy expertise, and a government willing to intervene when strategic assets are threatened. Airbus, nuclear energy, rail systems, defense, and high-end manufacturing remain protected pillars of national power. France does not let strategic industries disappear quietly. At the same time, France is not anti-technology. It simply integrates technology differently. Instead of chasing hype, France applies technology where it enhances identity, luxury, e-commerce, digital fashion, AI-assisted design, sustainable materials, aerospace innovation, fintech regulation, green energy transition. France is not trying to become Silicon Valley. France is trying to remain France digitally upgraded. And tourism? Tourism alone is a massive economic engine. France is consistently the most visited country in the world. Millions come not just to see monuments, but to experience the idea of France. Food, wine, art, museums, lifestyle. France turns memory into revenue. But here is the deeper truth. France's present-day economy is not built for explosive growth. It is built for endurance. France is designed to survive centuries, not quarters. While other economies race forward and burn out, France maintains relevance by anchoring itself to identity. It does not move fast, but when it moves with authority. This is why France can appear stagnant to short-term analysts and dominant to long-term thinkers at the same time. France plays a different game. And that brings us to the future. Part 3. The future. Can culture still create wealth in a world run by technology? France now stands at a familiar crossroads, one it has faced many times before. The world is changing fast. Technology accelerates everything. Artificial intelligence reshapes labor. Global power shifts east and south. Younger generations think differently about work, identity, and consumption. And the question quietly forming beneath all this change is simple but serious. Can France's culture-based economic model survive the future? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, only if France evolves without losing itself. France's future will not be built by abandoning culture. It will be built by upgrading culture. Luxury will remain France's strongest economic weapon, but luxury itself is transforming. The next era of luxury will not be defined only by beauty or heritage. It will be defined by meaning, sustainability, personalization, and responsibility. And once again, France is unusually well positioned for this shift. In the future, luxury will no longer mean excess, it will mean intention. French brands are already adapting. Sustainability is no longer optional. Ethical sourcing, traceability, environmental responsibility, circular production, and longevity are becoming part of brand identity. France understands that the future consumer does not want more things, they want better reasons. This favors nations that already know how to sell meaning. Technology will not replace French culture. It will reshape how culture is delivered. Digital fashion, virtual showrooms, AI-assisted design, blockchain authentication, and immersive experiences will allow French luxury to reach global audiences without losing exclusivity. Paris will not disappear, it will become both physical and digital. France's challenge is not innovation. It is integration. Another major issue shaping France's future is demographics. France has one of the more stable birth rates in Europe, But aging is still a reality. This means productivity must rise without relying on population growth. Automation, education reform, immigration integration, and skill development will become critical. France's advantage is its education system. Elite institutions, research centers, engineering schools, and cultural academies give France a deep talent reservoir. The future French economy will rely more heavily on high-skill, high-value labor and less on mass production. France will not compete with low-cost manufacturing nations. It will compete with quality-driven economies. Energy transition will also define France's future wealth. France already has one of the cleanest electricity grids in the world due to nuclear power. This gives France a strategic advantage in a carbon-constrained future. Energy stability means industrial stability. Industrial stability means investor confidence. This is quiet power, but extremely valuable. France's cities will evolve too. Paris will remain dominant, but regional cities will absorb more economic activity as remote work reshapes geography. Cultural tourism will decentralize. Smaller towns with history, food, and craftsmanship will become micro-economies of experience. France's countryside may become one of its greatest assets again. At the geopolitical level, France will continue to act as Europe's cultural voice. Germany leads industry. The UK leads finance, France leads identity. This triad gives France influence far beyond its GDP ranking. France's future will not be about being louder, it will be about being indispensable. But the biggest risk France faces is internal. If bureaucracy becomes too heavy, if innovation becomes too slow, if youth feel disconnected from opportunity, then even the strongest cultural brand can weaken. France must balance protection with openness, tradition with opportunity. The good news? France has done this balancing act before many times. France survives not because it avoids crises, but because it absorbs them and reshapes itself around them. The future will not look like the past. But the logic behind France's success remains unchanged. Whoever defines value controls the market. France intends to keep defining value. France's story is not about being the richest nation on earth. It is about being one of the few nations that understood what wealth actually is. Money comes and goes. Markets rise and fall. Empires expand and collapse. But identity, when carefully protected, can generate value across centuries. France never tried to win by producing more than everyone else. It didn't chase volume. It didn't race for speed. Instead, France chose a slower, more dangerous path, one that required patience, confidence, and discipline. France chose to decide what excellence looks like, and then refused to compromise on it. This is the quiet genius of France. By turning culture into an economic system, France achieved something rare: resilience. Kings fell. Revolutions erupted. Empires collapsed. Governments changed. Yet French influence never vanished. It simply changed form. When power couldn't be enforced with armies, it flowed through language, taste, law, art, food, and brands. France teaches us that wealth is not always loud. Sometimes wealth whispers and the world listens. In a modern age obsessed with speed, France reminds us that slowness can be strategic. In a world chasing trends, France proves that standards outlast trends. In economies addicted to disruption, France shows the strength of continuity. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this: you do not need to control everything. You only need to control what people value. France controlled value by defining elegance, by protecting craftsmanship, by regulating identity, by investing in culture as seriously as others invest in factories. That is why French luxury still commands premium prices. That is why French cities remain global references. That is why French influence extends far beyond its borders. France didn't export products. France exported meaning. And meaning compounds. As the future unfolds, shaped by artificial intelligence, automation, digital economies, and global uncertainty, France's model becomes even more relevant. When technology makes everything faster and cheaper, human identity becomes rarer. When production becomes automated, taste becomes power. When everything looks the same, distinctiveness becomes priceless. France understood this centuries ago. That is why France is not just a chapter in history. It is a case study in longevity. And this is the purpose of Sethtra Civilizations: not to memorize dates, but to understand how nations think, how they design wealth, and how they survive time itself. If this journey through France helped you see wealth differently, If it made you question speed, power, and success, then stay with us. Every week we explore another civilization, another strategy, another lesson hidden inside history. Like the video, share it with someone who enjoys deep thinking, and subscribe to continue this global journey through money, power, and civilization. The world is not built by accidents. It is built by ideas that survive. And France is one of those ideas.